The conference hall on Zenith Prime stretched wider than most planetary capitals. Crystalline walls rose 300 meters high, and the chamber could hold representatives from 2,000 species comfortably. Today it held barely 300. Most council sessions didn't require full attendance anymore. The important decisions had already been made by the core members decades ago, sometimes centuries ago. Everyone else just came to hear the results. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the human delegation's assigned seats. They were in the back, naturally. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for nearly 400 years, but their seats never moved closer to the center. The core species occupied those positions. The Vrin, who had been traveling between stars for 50,000 years. The Telk Consortium, who controlled half the trade routes in the galaxy. The Kralix Empire, whose military might kept the peace, or enforced it, depending on who you asked. Chen adjusted her tablet and waited. The morning session had dragged through 3 hours of procedural matters. Agricultural subsidies for the Outer Rim, updates to shipping lane regulations, a dispute between two minor species about mining rights on an asteroid field. Neither of them had actually reached yet. Standard business, her proposal was next. She had submitted it 6 months ago, following the proper channels. Humanity requested full voting rights on council matters and the removal of the primitive species protocols. Those protocols restricted how many colonies humans could establish, limited their military fleet sizes, and required human businesses to partner with established species for any major venture. The protocols had been designed for species who had just discovered faster-than-light travel and needed guidance. Humanity had been spacefaring for 4 centuries. Next matter, Elder Magistrate Vaughn announced. His voice resonated through the chamber's translation systems, rendering his Vrin speech patterns into something approximating authority in every language. Request 7492, submitted by the human delegation. Chen stood and walked to the speaking platform. Her shoes clicked on the polished floor. The sound echoed in the massive space. She reached the podium, placed her tablet down, and looked up at the assembled representatives. Honorable council members, she began. Humanity has served alongside you for 400 years. We have contributed to council research initiatives, paid our dues, followed protocols, and proven ourselves as reliable partners. We respectfully request that the primitive species protocols no longer apply to humanity, and that we receive full voting privileges in council decisions. She outlined her arguments: humanity's technological contributions, their peaceful expansion, their economic integration with dozens of species, their service in council peacekeeping operations. She spoke for exactly 15 minutes as regulations allowed. When she finished, Trade Coordinator Zilk was the first to respond. The Telk's translator rendered his chittering into smooth corporate speech. The human petition is noted. However, the Telk Consortium has concerns about expanding voting rights at this time. The balance of power in the council has maintained peace for millennia. Changing that structure could introduce instability. Several other representatives nodded their agreement. Chen had expected that response. Admiral Throck of the Kralix spoke next. The military restrictions exist for the safety of all species. Humanity has shown aggression in its past. The protocols ensure that such tendencies do not threaten council space. Our last major conflict ended 800 years ago, Chen replied calmly. Most member species cannot say the same. Exactly, Throck said. 800 years is nothing. The Kralix have maintained peace in our territories for 15,000 years. That is the difference between a mature species and an adolescent one. More nods around the chamber. Chen kept her expression neutral. She had heard variations of this argument countless times. Then Elder Magistrate Vaughn spoke. He did not stand. He didn't need to. When the Vrin Elder spoke, everyone listened. The human delegation must understand the perspective of this council, Vaughn said. His tone was not unkind, but it carried the weight of someone explaining basic facts to a child. Humanity believes 400 years is a long time. To you, it is ancient history. Your nations rise and fall in centuries. But the Vrin have maintained our civilization for 50,000 years. The structures we have built, the protocols we follow, they exist because we have learned from millennia of experience. He paused, letting the translation systems catch up. When humanity learns patience, when you understand that galactic civilization operates on timescales beyond your current comprehension, then perhaps we can discuss changes to your status. But that time is not now. Perhaps in another 1,000 years we will revisit this question. Vaughn's statement drew approving sounds from dozens of species. Chen looked around the chamber. She saw the expressions. Some sympathetic, most indifferent, a few openly disdainful. They had already decided, probably before she ever entered the room. She reached down and unplugged her tablet from the podium. She gathered her papers, organized them neatly, and placed them in her case. The chamber had gone quiet. Representatives watched her, confused by the interruption. "Ambassador Chen," Vaughn said, "the council has not dismissed you. You may present closing arguments." Chen closed her case with a soft click. She looked up at Vaughn, then at the assembled council. "I have no closing arguments," she said. Her voice was steady, clear. "Humanity has presented its position. The council has made its position equally clear. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council frameworks, agreements, and treaties. We will honor existing contracts until their expiration dates, then decline renewal. We wish you well." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the stunned silence. "Ambassador," Zilk's voice crackled through his translator. "You cannot simply withdraw. There are procedures, negotiations, transition periods." Chen stopped at the doorway and looked back. "Elder Magistrate Vaughn just told me to come back in 1,000 years. We're taking his advice. Goodbye." She left. The doors closed behind her with a soft hiss. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the chamber erupted in noise. Representatives talked over each other, their translators creating a garbled mess of overlapping voices. Vaughn raised one manipulator for silence. The noise died down gradually. "The human outburst is emotional but temporary," he said. "They will return within weeks. Humanity depends on council trade, council protection, and council infrastructure. This is theater, nothing more. We will receive their apology shortly and can then discuss reasonable terms for their return." Zilk wasn't so sure, but he kept that thought to himself. He had worked with human corporations for decades. They were strange. Emotional, yes, but also stubborn in ways that made no economic sense. He made a note to contact his human business partners, just to maintain those relationships. Insurance, nothing more. Admiral Throck actually laughed. "Let them go. They'll discover quickly how dangerous the galaxy is without council protection. Better they learn that lesson now." The council moved on to the next item on the agenda, a request from a minor species for disaster relief after a solar flare had damaged their communications grid. The request was approved with minimal discussion. Outside the station, Chen boarded the human transport. Her aide was waiting. "Did they accept the proposal?" he asked. "No," Chen said. She sat down and looked out the viewport at the massive station. "Begin protocol exodus. Contact all human personnel, all human businesses, all human contractors operating under council authority. Start the withdrawal. All of them? Every single one." The transport undocked and turned toward the jump gate. Behind them, Zenith Prime continued its orbit, gleaming in the light of the system's star. Inside, the council continued their meeting, confident that order would prevail. They were wrong. 2 weeks passed before anyone noticed the problems. Trade Coordinator Zilk sat in his office on the Telk homeworld, staring at reports that made no sense. His logistics network was failing. Not catastrophically, not yet, but the numbers were wrong. Ships were arriving late. Cargo was being misrouted. 3 freighters had simply disappeared from tracking systems entirely, only to reappear days later at the wrong stations. He called his operations manager. "What's happening with the routing systems?" "We're investigating," the manager said. His translator made his distress sound like mild concern, but Zilk could read the color shifts in his carapace. The manager was worried. "The automated systems are generating errors. Routes that worked for decades are suddenly inefficient. We're trying to fix it manually, but there are thousands of ships." "Why are the automated systems failing?" "We don't know yet. They were updated 2 months ago, but the updates were standard maintenance from our usual contractor." "Which contractor?" The manager checked his files. "Stellar Solutions Incorporated. Human company. They've handled our fleet management software for..." "Oh." Zilk felt his breathing sacs contract. "Get them on a call now." "I tried. Their office says they've fulfilled all contracted obligations and declined to renew. They suggested we contact alternative service providers." "Alternative providers? They built our entire logistics network." "Yes, Coordinator." Zilk pulled up the contract files himself. He read through the terms, getting angrier with each paragraph. Stellar Solutions had delivered everything they promised. Every update, every patch, every service call, right up until the contract expired 2 weeks ago. Then they had simply stopped. No negotiation, no transition period, just stopped. He tried to call the human CEO directly. The message he received was polite and brief. Stellar Solutions is withdrawing from all operations in Council space. We apologize for any inconvenience. We recommend you contact the VRIN Technical Consortium for alternative services. Zilk did exactly that. The VRIN technical representative listened to his problem, consulted with their engineers, and came back with an estimate. They could rebuild his logistics network in approximately 8 years, at 4 times what he had been paying the humans, and they would need complete access to his current systems to reverse engineer how the human software worked. 8 years? Zilk's voice rose high enough that his translator struggled. My consortium will collapse in 8 months. I understand your concern, the VRIN representative said. However, the human software is remarkably complex. They use algorithms and approaches we are still analyzing. Without their cooperation, we must build from scratch. Zilk ended the call. He sat in his office and watched his empire crumble in real time on his screens. Ships wandering between stars, missing deliveries, burning fuel on inefficient routes. His competitors would destroy him, unless they were having the same problems. He called his rival, the head of the Mektar Consortium. She was desperate enough to answer. You too? She asked. Everything, Zilk said. You? Our human contractors all left. Fleet management, communications, data analysis, accounting systems. Everything they touched is failing. They shared information for an hour, something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. They discovered they all used human services. Every major consortium, every trading fleet, every shipping company. Humans hadn't dominated any single market, but they had quietly become essential to all of them. On the other side of Council space, Medical Director Kess faced a different crisis. The plague had started on Vrin Prime in the capital city. A respiratory virus mutating faster than their medical systems could track. Normally, this would be manageable. The Vrin had sophisticated medical technology and robust public health systems, but the rapid vaccine synthesis protocols weren't working. The machines kept producing formulas that were 3 or 4 mutations behind the current strain. By the time they manufactured vaccines, the virus had changed again. Kess reviewed the protocols desperately. They had been implemented 15 years ago, developed in partnership with human medical research firms. The humans had called it adaptive immunization architecture. It used predictive algorithms to forecast viral mutations and develop vaccines proactively instead of reactively. It had been revolutionary. Plague deaths had dropped by 90% across Council space. Kess had won awards for implementing the system. She had given speeches about the triumph of Vrin medical science. Now she realized the truth. The Vrin hadn't developed the system. They had purchased it, and when the human medical companies withdrew, they took the knowledge with them. The virus spread to 3 more worlds. Thousands died, then tens of thousands. Kess worked 20-hour days trying to coordinate a response with traditional methods. Quarantines, contact tracing, vaccine development that took weeks instead of days. She submitted an emergency request to the Council for Human Medical Assistance. The response came from Ambassador Chen herself. It was brief. Humanity sympathizes with those affected by the outbreak. However, we are no longer part of Council frameworks and cannot provide official assistance. We wish you success in managing this crisis. Kess read the message 3 times, looking for any hint of flexibility. There was none. The humans had left and they weren't coming back. In the outer rim, jump gates began failing. The network had always been maintained by a combination of species. The Vrin designed the gates. The Kralix protected them, and human engineering firms did the actual maintenance. Chief Engineer Rolk responded to the first failure report personally. The gate at Sector 47 had simply stopped working. Ships could enter but not exit. 17 vessels were trapped in jump space, their crews terrified and their life support running down. Rolk's team reached the gate and began diagnostics. What they found horrified them. The maintenance systems were incredibly complex. Thousands of subsystems, all interconnected, all dependent on precise calibration. The human maintenance crews had kept detailed logs, but those logs assumed knowledge that Rolk's team didn't have. It's like reading instructions that skip every other step, one of Roke's engineers said. They tell us what to do but not why or how. They managed to reset the gate through trial and error, freeing the trapped ships. But by then 2 more gates had failed. Then 5. Then 12. Roke contacted the Council with an emergency report. The jump gate network was collapsing. Without immediate intervention, travel between sectors would become impossible within months. Elder Magistrate Vaughn called an emergency council session. The chamber was crowded this time. Everyone had noticed the problems now. The human withdrawal is causing unforeseen complications, Vaughn admitted. His voice remained calm, but those who knew him could detect the strain. We require a coordinated response to maintain critical infrastructure. Admiral Throck stood to speak. The Kralix Empire launched a raid on telk mining colonies in Sector 93. This was necessary to secure resources for our citizens. We informed the telk through proper channels. Zilk rose immediately. You attacked our colonies. I stated we informed you. The telk response was delayed because your communication systems were malfunctioning. This is not our concern. You would never have dared attack us before. Zilk stopped himself. The truth was obvious. The Kralix had never attacked because the humans had been mediating their territorial disputes. Quietly, behind the scenes, making sure that conflicts stayed diplomatic instead of military. Without that mediation, old grudges were surfacing, fast. Vaughn tried to restore order, but the council session devolved into arguments. Species blamed each other for the failures. Everyone wanted someone else to fix the problems. Nobody wanted to admit the real issue. They needed the humans. Desperately. Contact Earth, Vaughn finally ordered. Send a diplomatic delegation. Offered to negotiate new terms. The delegation departed 3 days later. They carried messages of reconciliation, offers of improved status, and carefully worded apologies. They reached the Sol system and requested permission to enter. Captain Maria Torres of the Human Border Patrol reviewed their request. She was young, only 32, but she had been military for a decade. She read the Council's message twice, then recorded her response. Your request for diplomatic access is denied. Ambassador Chen made humanity's position clear. We are no longer part of Council frameworks. Please respect our borders and return to Council space. The delegation tried to negotiate. They sent more messages, each more desperate than the last. Torres sent the same response to each one. Finally, the delegation left, their mission a failure. Vaughn received their report in his office. He sat alone, something unusual for a Vryn elder. They preferred company, conversation, community. But right now, Vaughn needed to think. The galaxy was coming apart. Not quickly, but steadily. Trade routes failing, plagues spreading, infrastructure crumbling. And the humans, the species he had dismissed as immature, were the only ones who could fix it. He had made a terrible mistake. The Council had made a terrible mistake. And now billions would pay for that error. Vaughn opened a new file and began drafting a personal message to Ambassador Chen. Not an official Council communication. Something different. An admission of fault from someone who had finally understood what they had lost. 1 month after the withdrawal, the galaxy was burning. Not literally. Not everywhere. But the fires had started and nobody seemed able to stop them. The Telk and Kralix were at war in 3 sectors. The Vryn plague had spread to 15 worlds. The jump gate network had lost 30% functionality. And those were just the obvious problems. Medical Director Kess stood in the morgue on Vryn Prime and tried not to scream. Rows of bodies stretched in every direction. They had run out of proper storage 3 days ago. Now they used cargo containers kept cold and stacked in warehouses. The dead numbered in the millions now. The virus kept mutating, kept spreading, and her teams couldn't keep up. She had lost 12 colleagues to the plague. Good people, brilliant scientists. They had worked themselves to exhaustion trying to save others, and the virus had taken them anyway. Her personal communicator buzzed. Another emergency. She almost ignored it, but the code indicated it was from the Agricultural Ministry. She accepted the call. Director Kess, we have a situation. The crop coordination network has collapsed. We cannot organize the harvest schedules. Kess felt exhaustion drag at her. I'm a medical director.
Why are you calling me?
Because you're on the Emergency Coordination Council, and nobody else is answering. The harvest season is here. If we don't coordinate, millions of tons of food will rot in the fields. We're looking at famine on 17 agricultural worlds. Fix it manually. We tried. The systems are too complex. Each planet needs to coordinate with hundreds of others. Transport ships, processing facilities, distribution networks. The humans designed the whole system to work automatically. Without them, we have 9,000 agricultural administrators trying to do work that required 300 human logistics specialists. Kess closed her eyes. Another crisis. Another human-shaped hole in galactic civilization. Do your best, she said. I can't help you. I'm trying to stop a plague, she ended the call. 5 more came in the next hour. Infrastructure failures. Economic collapses. Security breakdowns. Every crisis led back to the same problem. The humans were gone and nobody else knew how to do their jobs. Across the galaxy, on the Kralix homeworld, Admiral Throck reviewed battle, reports, and felt something he rarely experienced. Doubt the war with the Telk was going. Well, militarily. His fleets had captured 15 mining colonies and destroyed 3 Telk defensive stations. Victory after victory. But something was wrong. His logistics coordinator stood before him, mandibles clicking nervously. Admiral, our supply lines are failing. Food shipments are delayed. Ammunition production is down 40%. The fleet repair facilities are reporting critical shortages. Why? We control more territory now than before the war. The territory is useless without the infrastructure to exploit it. The mining colonies we captured are offline. The human workers all left and we can't operate the equipment. It's more sophisticated than our own systems. Throck pulled up reports from his intelligence division. What he found disturbed him greatly. The humans hadn't just worked in obvious positions. They had been everywhere. Mining engineers, logistics coordinators, communication specialists, equipment maintenance technicians, cultural advisors who helped Kralix officers understand alien species they occupied. His empire had conquered a dozen species over the millennia. Every conquest had been successful because the Kralix understood warfare and the humans understood everything else. They had never realized the partnership existed until it ended. How many humans worked in critical positions? Throck asked. We're still calculating. Current estimate is approximately 40,000 across all occupied territories. And how many remain? 17. All scheduled to depart within 2 weeks. Throck dismissed his coordinator and sat alone in his war room. The tactical displays showed Kralix victories across 3 sectors, but the resource displays showed something different. His empire was slowly starving itself. Every battle consumed supplies he couldn't replace. Every occupation required administrators he didn't have. He had started this war because the humans were gone, and nothing restrained him anymore. Now he realized the humans hadn't restrained him. They had enabled him. Without their support, the Kralix Empire couldn't function. On the Telk homeworld, Zilk faced a different revelation. His consortium was dying, but so was everyone else's. The entire economy was collapsing. He called a meeting of the major trading families, something that hadn't happened in 300 years. Competitors who spent centuries trying to destroy each other now gathered to share information. They discovered the scope of the disaster. Humans had worked in every major economic sector. They designed the trading algorithms that prevented market crashes. They maintained the banking systems that processed trillions of transactions daily. They staffed the arbitration courts that resolved commercial disputes. They ran the insurance companies that made interstellar trade possible. Why didn't we notice? One consortium leader asked. How did one species become so essential? Zilk had spent weeks researching that question. He finally had an answer. Because they worked beneath our notice, he said. Humans took jobs that paid well by their standards but were insignificant to us. Technical positions, service roles, support staff. We thought we were exploiting cheap labor. We never realized we were dependent on it. But they're just one species, another leader protested. Surely we can replace them. With whom? Zilk pulled up employment statistics. Humans represented less than 4% of Council space population. But they held 30% of all technical positions, 40% of all maintenance roles, and 60% of all diplomatic support positions. They worked harder than most species. They learned faster. They adapted to alien cultures more easily, and they cost less than hiring specialists from the core species. So we exploited them, and now they're punishing us. No. Zilk surprised himself with the certainty in his voice. They're not punishing us. They're just gone. Punishment implies they care what happens to us. Ambassador Chen's message was clear. They've moved on. The meeting ended with no solutions. The consortium leaders returned to their failing businesses and tried to salvage what they could. Zilk stayed behind, looking at reports from his market analysts. They predicted total economic collapse within 6 months. After that, barter systems, local trade only, a return to pre-spaceflight economics. Thousands of years of progress vanishing in months. On Zenith Prime, Elder Magistrate Vaughn convened an emergency council session. Every member attended this time. Even species that hadn't sent representatives in decades were present. The crisis had everyone's attention now. Vaughn looked out at the assembled delegates and saw fear. Real fear. These were species that had conquered star systems, built empires, survived for millennia, and they were terrified. The council faces an existential crisis, Vaughn said. He had abandoned the formal speech patterns. No time for ceremony. Our infrastructure is failing. Our economy is collapsing. Our security is compromised. We estimate 40 billion deaths in the next year if current trends continue. That number will grow. Silence filled the chamber. 40 billion was more than most wars in galactic history. We must contact the humans, someone said. Vaughn didn't even see who spoke. It didn't matter, we tried. They refused diplomatic contact. They denied us access to human space. They are withdrawing completely from galactic civilization. Then we force them. Admiral Throck's voice boomed across the chamber. The Kralix fleet can reach Earth in 3 weeks. We make them help us, and when your fleet arrives? Vaughn asked quietly. What then? You conquer Earth? Force humans to work at gunpoint? How does that solve any of our problems? The humans helped us because they chose to. Force changes nothing. Then what do? The cry came from a dozen species at once. Vaughn had prepared an answer. He had spent weeks on it, consulting with advisors, running scenarios, analyzing options. All paths led to the same conclusion. We humble ourselves, he said. The Council votes to formally apologize to humanity. We offer them full and equal membership. We dismantle the primitive species protocols. We grant them everything they requested and more. We beg them to return. The Council does not beg, someone protested. Then the Council dies, Vaughn said simply. Choose. The vote took 6 hours. Not because the outcome was uncertain, but because nobody wanted to admit defeat. Finally, the measure passed. Nearly unanimous. Only the Kralix abstained. Vaughn drafted the message personally. He wrote it in simple language, without diplomatic flourishes or formal structures. He told the truth. The Council had been wrong. Humanity deserved respect, partnership, and equality. Would they please reconsider their withdrawal? He sent the message to every human colony, every human station, every human settlement in known space. Then he waited for a response. 3 days passed, then a week, then 2 weeks. No response came from Earth. No response came from any human world. But refugees began arriving at Council stations. Not human refugees. Refugees from a dozen minor species that the Council had ignored for centuries. They came on human ships escorted by human patrol craft. The humans delivered them to Council space, then turned around and left. The refugees brought stories. The humans were building something new, a different kind of alliance, not based on seniority or military might, based on mutual respect and equal partnership. Species that the Council had exploited or ignored. 3 months after the withdrawal, Elder Magistrate Vaughn did something unprecedented. He resigned from the Council. His fellow Vryn were horrified. Elder Magistrate served for life. The position carried honor that stretched back 50,000 years. To resign was to admit complete failure, to abandon duty, to shame one's entire bloodline. Vaughn did it anyway. He chartered a small ship, not a Council vessel, a private craft. He took no staff, no guards, no diplomatic entourage, just himself and a pilot. He filed a flight plan to Earth and departed before anyone could stop him. The journey took 3 weeks. Vaughn spent the time reading, not Council reports or diplomatic briefings. He read human history, human philosophy, human literature, things he should have read decades ago. What he discovered shamed him. Humanity's history was brutal. Wars that killed millions, genocide, slavery, oppression. They had done terrible things to each other, but they had also struggled constantly to do better, to grow, to change. Their history was a story of species learning, painfully and slowly, how to be better than they were. The Vryn history was different. They had achieved peace and stability 40,000 years ago. Then they had stopped growing. They maintained their civilization perfectly, never changing, never adapting. They thought stability was wisdom. Now Vaughn understood it was stagnation. The humans reached Earth's solar system after 3 weeks. Captain Maria Torres contacted them immediately. Unidentified vessel, you are approaching restricted space. State your purpose. I am Elder Magistrate Vaughn of the Vryn. I request an audience with Ambassador Chen. I come alone, without council authority, as a private citizen. There was a long pause. Vaughn imagined Torres consulting with her superiors, checking databases, trying to determine if this was some kind of trick. Stand by, Torres finally said. 2 hours later, she called back. You're cleared to approach Earth. You will dock at Station Unity. Ambassador Chen will meet you there. Any aggressive action will result in immediate destruction of your vessel. Understood? Understood. Thank you, Captain. Station Unity orbited Earth, a massive structure that had been expanded significantly in recent months. Vaughn's ship docked and he emerged to find Ambassador Chen waiting. She looked tired. There were lines on her face that hadn't been there 3 months ago. Elder Magistrate, she said formally. Just Vaughn, he replied. I resigned. I no longer represent the council. Chen studied him for a long moment. Then she gestured down a corridor. Let's talk. They walked through the station. Vaughn observed everything. Human workers, but also others. Brel, a species the council had classified as primitive. Orthi, a species too aggressive for council membership. Sylph, aquatic beings whose needs were too expensive to accommodate. All working together apparently as equals. Chen led him to a conference room. They sat across from each other. No table between them. No formal setup. Just 2 people in a quiet room. The council is dying, Vaughn said. He saw no point in diplomacy. Billions have already died. Billions more will follow. Our economy has collapsed. Our infrastructure is failing. Species that were allies for millennia are at war. We need help. I know, Chen said. We monitor the situation. Will you help us? Why should we? The question hung in the air. Vaughn had prepared many answers. Humanitarian reasons, shared history, mutual benefit, strategic considerations. But looking at Chen's tired face, he realized she had heard all those arguments already. She wanted something else. You shouldn't, Vaughn said quietly. We treated you terribly. We exploited your labor, dismissed your contributions, and denied you basic respect. When you asked for equality, I personally told you to wait 1,000 years. I was wrong. The council was wrong. We don't deserve your help. Chen leaned back in her chair. That's the first honest thing a council member has said to me in 400 years. I came to understand something during my journey here, Vaughn continued. Humans weren't the problem, we were. The council achieved stability millennia ago and mistook it for superiority. We stopped learning. We stopped growing. When humanity joined us, you kept growing. You kept learning. You adapted to every species you met. You learned our languages, our cultures, our needs. And you filled the gaps we were too proud to acknowledge. We didn't have a choice, Chen said. The primitive species protocols forced us into support roles. Yes, and you excelled at them. Not because you were primitive, but because you understood something we had forgotten. Civilization isn't about hierarchy. It's about cooperation. Every role matters. Every person matters. We had the arrogance of age. You had the wisdom of empathy. Chen stood and walked to the viewport. Earth turned slowly below them, blue and green and beautiful. Do you know why we left? She asked. I thought it was anger, pride, retaliation for dismissing your proposal. No. Chen turned to face him. We left because staying was making us like you. Our young people were learning that some species matter more than others, that arbitrary hierarchy is acceptable, that contributions don't earn respect. We were teaching our children to accept second-class status. I couldn't allow that. Vaughn felt the words like a physical blow. They had corrupted human culture simply by making humans part of their structure. What you're doing here, Vaughn gestured at the station. This alternative alliance. What is it? A partnership of equals. No senior species. No primitive protocols. Every member has equal voice and equal votes. Decisions require consensus, not majority rule. It's slow. It's messy, but it's fair. How many species have joined? 47 so far. Small species mostly, the ones the council ignored or exploited, but they're growing, learning, building something new together. And the council? Vaughn asked. Will you let us die? Chen was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was soft. We're not letting you die. You're dying because the structure you built was unsustainable. You created a hierarchy that depended on exploiting those beneath you. When we left, the whole thing collapsed. That's not our fault. That's yours. I know, Vaughn said. I know. But there are billions of innocent people suffering. People who never made the decisions. People who are dying because of our mistakes. And what would you have me do? Send humans back to save you, so you can return to the same structure? Make the same mistakes? No, Vaughn stood to face her. I came to ask you to teach us. Not to save us. To show us how to save ourselves. How to build what you're building here. A real partnership equals. Chen studied him carefully. The council would never accept that. The core species would never surrender their power. The council as it exists is already dead. It just hasn't admitted it yet. But something new could rise from the ashes. If we have guidance, if we have a model to follow, that's not humanity's responsibility. No, Vaughn agreed. It's not. But I've read your history. You've made terrible mistakes. You've built oppressive systems and torn them down and built them again. You've learned, slowly and painfully, how to be better. That's your strength. Not that you're perfect, but that you never stop trying to improve. Chen walked back to her chair and sat down heavily. She looked exhausted. I can't make this decision alone, she said finally. This would require approval from the human government and from our alliance partners. The species we've been helping. They have a voice in our decisions now. I understand. And even if they agree, we won't rebuild your systems. We won't restore the old order. If we help, it's to build something new. Something better. That means the core species give up power. Real power. Can you imagine elder magistrates and admirals and consortium leaders accepting that? No, Vaughn said honestly. Most will resist. Some will fight. But some of us understand. Some of us have learned. If nothing else, desperation is an excellent teacher. Chen pulled out her communicator. I'll arrange meetings. You'll need to speak with our government, with our alliance partners. If even one of them says no, the answer is no. Understood? Understood. And Vaughn? This isn't a negotiation. We're not going back to council space to serve. If we help as equals, partners, or not at all. That's all I'm asking for. Chen stood. There's a guest quarters assigned to you. Get some rest. The meetings start tomorrow. They won't be easy. Vaughn followed her out of the conference room. As they walked, he saw more species working together. Humans and aliens moving with easy familiarity, laughing together, solving problems together. No obvious hierarchy. No one species in charge. It looked chaotic to his ancient eyes, but it also looked alive in a way the council hadn't been for thousands of years. Maybe that was the point. Maybe civilization wasn't supposed to be perfect and stable. Maybe it was supposed to be messy and growing and constantly reaching for something better. Maybe humanity had learned something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten, and now if the galaxy was lucky, they might teach it again. 6 months after the withdrawal, the galaxy looked nothing like it had before. The old Galactic Council still existed, technically. Representatives still met on Zenith Prime, but they governed a fraction of what they once controlled. Dozens of species had declared independence. Trade routes operated on local agreements rather than council regulations. The jump gate network functioned at minimal capacity, maintained by whoever had the knowledge and resources to keep individual gates running. The death toll had stopped climbing. Not because the crisis was over, but because populations had stabilized at new, lower levels. The plague had burned itself out after killing 47 million Vrin. Famine had claimed billions across agricultural worlds before local systems adapted. The Telkralix War had ended in exhausted stalemate, both empires too depleted to continue fighting. On Earth, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the General Assembly of the new Federation. That was what they called it now. The name was temporary. They would choose something better eventually, but for now it served its purpose. 47 species had formed the initial alliance. That number had grown to 93. Most were small species, former council members who had been marginalized or exploited, but some were surprising additions. The Brel representative stood to speak. His translator rendered his ultrasonic communication into standard speech. The Brel delegation has completed our infrastructure assessment of the former council territories. The situation is stabilizing but remains critical. Medical supplies are reaching plague zones. Food distribution has improved. However, the jump gate network requires immediate attention. A Sylth representative, speaking from her water-filled chamber, added her report. The Sylth Engineering Corps has identified 200 gates requiring urgent maintenance. We have the technical knowledge but lack the resources. We request Federation support, Chen nodded. Approved. Coordinate with the Human Engineering Divisions and the Orthe fabrication facilities. Priority goes to gates connecting populated systems. This was how the new Federation worked. Species contributed what they could. Humans provided technical knowledge and organizational systems. The Orthe, once dismissed as too aggressive, turned out to be brilliant manufacturers. The Sylth, whose aquatic nature made them expensive to accommodate, had insights into quantum mechanics that revolutionized gate maintenance. The Brel, with their echolocation-based senses, could detect structural flaws invisible to other species. Everyone brought something. Everyone mattered. The assembly session continued for hours. Chen listened to reports, authorized resources, and coordinated responses. It was exhausting work. The new Federation ran on consensus, which meant every major decision required extensive discussion. But it also meant every voice was heard. After the session, Chen returned to her office. Vaughn was waiting there. He had been on Earth for 3 months now, attending every assembly session, learning how the Federation operated. He looked older than when he arrived. The weight of witnessing his civilization's collapse showed in his posture. The assembly approved humanitarian aid for 3 more Council worlds, Chen said. Medical supplies and food. The shipments leave tomorrow. Thank you, Vaughn said quietly. That will save thousands of lives. The Vryn delegation asked again about joining the Federation. Did you speak with them? Vaughn nodded. I explained the requirements. Equal status. No special privileges based on age or size or history. They struggled with the concept. Will they accept? Some will. The younger generations especially. But the old guard refuses to surrender power. They still believe the Council can be restored to its former glory. Chen sat down heavily. It can't. They know that, right? Knowing and accepting are different things. I'm 50,000 years old, Ambassador. I've lived longer than most civilizations. It's hard to admit that everything you built, everything you believed was wrong. You managed it. I had no choice. I watched my people die because of my arrogance. That kind of education is difficult to ignore. Vaughn paused. There's something I need to tell you. Admiral Throck is gathering support for a military response. Chen's attention sharpened. Explain. The Kralix Empire is collapsing. Throck believes the only solution is to conquer human space and force you to restore the old systems. He's building a coalition of desperate Council species. They plan to attack within months. How many ships? 3,000 at last count. It's most of what remains of Council military power. Chen pulled up tactical displays. 3,000 ships was a serious threat. The new Federation had defensive fleets, but nothing that size. Not yet. We could defeat them, she said slowly. Our technology has advanced. Our tactics are better, but it would cost lives on both sides. I know. That's why I'm telling you. So you can prepare, or we could do something else. Chen pulled up communication systems. I'm calling an emergency assembly. Full session. Every member species. And I'm inviting Council representatives to attend, including Admiral Throck. Vaughn looked skeptical. He won't come. He will. Because I'm going to offer him something he needs more than conquest. A way forward. The emergency assembly convened 2 days later. The chamber on Station Unity had been expanded to accommodate everyone. 93 Federation species sent representatives. 27 Council species accepted the invitation, including Admiral Throck. The Kralix Admiral entered with visible contempt. His translator made his disdain clear. I came to see the human arrogance before crushing it. Chen stood at the center of the assembly. No elevated platform. No special position. Just another representative among many. Admiral Throck, you're planning to attack us. To force humanity back into service to the Council. To restore the old order. Is that accurate? Throck's aggression faltered slightly. He hadn't expected such directness. The Council requires human expertise to survive. If you won't provide it willingly, we'll take it by force. And if you win, if you conquer Earth and the human colonies, what then? You'll restore our systems. Rebuild our infrastructure. Save our civilization. At gunpoint, Chen said. You'll force humans to work to serve, to fix everything while being treated as prisoners. How long do you think that will last? How well do you think humans will work under those conditions? Throck had no answer. Chen continued, "The truth, Admiral, is that even if you win the battle, you lose the war. Because the old council is dead. Not because we killed it, because it was built on exploitation and hierarchy and unsustainable power structures. It was always going to collapse. We just stopped holding it up." "Then the galaxy dies," Throck said. "No, the galaxy changes. It's already changing." Chen gestured at the assembled representatives, 93 species working together as equals. Sharing knowledge, sharing resources, building something better than what existed before. You could be part of that. We would be junior partners in your empire. "There are no junior partners," a Brel representative said. "We were classified as primitive by the council. But here, our insights matter as much as anyone's." A Silth representative added, "The council said accommodating our needs was too expensive. The Federation found solutions. We contribute more now than we ever could under council rule." Other voices joined in, species after species sharing their experiences, how the new Federation was different, how they had found purpose and respect and genuine partnership. Throck listened. Chen watched him process the information. She could see the calculation happening. The military assessment, the political evaluation, the desperate search for alternatives to admitting defeat. Finally, he spoke. "What are you offering?" "A choice," Chen said. "You can attack us. You'll lose. Our defensive capabilities are beyond what the council understands. Or you can join us, not as conquerors, not as senior partners, as equals. Learn what we've built. Contribute what you can. Help create something better than what existed before. The Kralix Empire does not beg for membership. I'm not asking you to beg. I'm asking you to evolve, to grow, to admit that the old way failed and try something new. That takes more courage than conquest ever did." Throck stood in silence. Behind him, other council representatives watched. Some looked hopeful. Others looked terrified. All looked desperate. "I need to consult with my government," Throck said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you need. The offer remains open. For all council species." The assembly continued late into the night. Council representatives asked questions. Federation members shared experiences. No decisions were made, but conversations started. Real conversations. Not diplomatic posturing, but genuine dialogue about how to move forward. Over the following months, the galaxy continued to change. Some council species applied for Federation membership. The process was long and difficult. It required giving up power, acknowledging past mistakes, and learning to work as equals. Not everyone could do it, but some could. The younger generations especially. They had lived through the collapse. They understood that the old way had failed. They were willing to try something new. The Vryn were among the first to officially apply. Not the entire species. Many of the elder generation refused. But enough of the younger Vryn believed in the change that they formed a new government and requested membership. Thank you for watching, and comment for next part.